Hello there, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Deidre Martinez, the CEO of the Sheboygan County Chamber of Commerce, and today we will have an opportunity to talk with some of our candidates in Assembly Districts 25, 26, 27, and unfortunately we've had to cancel 59 today. I want to just do a quick thank you to our governmental affairs and advocacy sponsors. Annually, Prevea Health supports these efforts and supports chamber programming, and we just want to say thank you to Prevea Health for your continued sponsorship. And with the election just a few days away, first we're going to spend some time getting to know our first candidate, Mr. Welch, who is running for District 25 Assembly. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I am a retired airline pilot. I flew for 30 years. I was a union representative, contract negotiator. I enlisted in the Air Force in 1972, and after I was discharged, I went to work for the Metropolitan Bus Company in Minneapolis, driving bus, and so I was a union member there. Eventually I got the pilot ratings to teach flying. I taught flying for a couple of years, and then I got an airline job, and that's how I stuck with it. I think my experience as a contract negotiator and so on will help, because I try to talk to people to reach a concession rather than it's either my way or your way. I have 4 granddaughters and 2 grandsons who are marrying age. One grandson is still not ready, but I worry about health care for the girls.
Okay.
We saw just today another woman died because she had a miscarriage and they wouldn't remove it, so she basically bled out. She was infected and no treatment, and I don't understand how that can be happening in this country. I mean, that's just basic health care. It's not an abortion, it's not anything, it's health care. And so that was one of the reasons I got involved. Another one was our school systems. We are being taxed for 2 school systems, and we really only need one. One is very underperforming, which is the charter schools or whatever.
But take on this role. And thank you for your willingness to serve. And I would be remiss if I apologize. Incumbent Tittl was not able to join us today. So we're very sorry that he's not here. But we wish him the best of luck. And thank you to you again for being able to join us today. Do you prefer me call you Steve or Mr. Welch?
Steve.
Steve is okay? Okay. Perfect. Well, we'll get right into the line of questioning, if you don't mind. All right. First, as a Chamber of Commerce, certainly workforce development, economic development, and things of this nature are near and dear to our hearts. It's what we live and breathe on a daily basis. So given the rapid changes in technology and the labor market, what specific strategies would you propose to enhance workforce training programs in Wisconsin, and how would you ensure these programs meet the evolving needs of both employers and employees?
One of the things is I believe that the tech schools are very good at basically training people, getting them ready for hands-on work. I personally don't believe everybody is suited for college all the way through. There's excellent jobs and training so that they can learn and use apprenticeships to bring people into a job. Let them, this can start in high school, and in some places it does, and they learn how to do things with their hands and solve problems, and the more we can train our own people to do this, our Wisconsinites, the better off we are. We keep the jobs here. Things like the CHIPS Act is bringing jobs into Wisconsin. And we really need to stress the training levels. You know, I had I was an ex-brother-in-law, but he went all the way through school, got a PhD in history, and he ended up being a carpenter on bridges. So, you know, history is a great thing to know, but it didn't pay any of his bills.
Sure.
So you get your hands dirty and you work, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay. So obviously you're talking quite a bit about the skills and the skills gap, especially in emerging industries, technology, renewable energy. How would you plan to collaborate with the educational institutions to ensure that our workforce is ready?
One of the things that I've talked to some union leaders, and one of the things that is good is to get, while these kids are learning these trades, get them in an apprenticeship basically with the union so that they can start to work. You know, you don't need to be a fully rounded plumber to start being a plumber, you know. A lot of us do that at home for no pay. But see, it's...
The pipes sometimes leak when I'm done, but...
Yeah, but it's a matter of getting high school age students to decide what is their real life goal. Mine, when I did it, it seemed like it was unattainable. I would never have thought in high school that I would make it to an airline captain. But I did that for about 30 years, and I loved what I did.
Sure.
And it wasn't a college degree that got me there. It was technical training.
Sure. Thank you. Mm-hmm. With small businesses being a vital part of Wisconsin's economy, what concrete policies would you implement to support their growth, particularly in underserved communities, and how would you measure the success of the actual policies that are put in place?
Well, let's take grocery stores, for example. There's a lot of food deserts out there, and we could give people a tax incentive to go in there and build these grocery stores so that people could get things. Other small business is the backbone of the country, and do everything we can to help them. Tax breaks, because eventually, if they make it, they're going to pay more in taxes. And so if we start them out giving them a bit of a break, they have a chance to build their business.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything more you'd like to add?
Not that I can think of offhand.
Okay. Healthcare is another piece to workforce development, attraction, and retention, especially in the state of Wisconsin. And Wisconsin has been one of the last states to expand Medicaid under the ACA. Do you support expanding healthcare opportunities, and why or why not?
Absolutely. We're running into healthcare deserts in the northwest part of the state. There's hospitals closing because they have no funding. You know, the people there generally don't make that much over poverty wages because it's either timber or mining. But the hospitals need to have that money coming in so that they can meet basic needs. We have people up there now that have to be taken by helicopter or an ambulance to Minnesota for health care. We need to take that Medicaid money and bring it into the state. It's a lot of money. It's 8 million, or I think, for this year alone they could bring in. And that would do a lot to help the small town doctors' offices, hospitals. I was told the story of one doctor who he was hired into the town. They wanted him, but when he got there, he looked around and there's nobody, there's no way to make a living. So he went elsewhere. We have to incentivize our healthcare programs.
Sure. Thank you. A study by the City of Sheboygan recently showed a need for several thousand more homes, and specifically the median household income in Sheboygan County was around $65,000 between 2017 and 2021. What measures would you take to address the affordable housing shortage, and how would you work with local municipalities to ensure they have the resources that they need to be successful?
One of the big things, I think, is we have a lot of empty buildings that could be refurbished and made into at least transitional apartments. I know up in Manitowoc, there's a church that is buying up an old school building. They're converting it to a 30-room temporary housing. Otherwise, I agree with Harris on giving tax breaks to people buying homes for the first time. One of the things that I thought was crazy is we bought a small house in Two Rivers about 8 years ago, and we had it reassessed. We paid about $40,000 for it, which was reasonable for just a one-bedroom home. They came and reassessed it, and it was $94,000. So if somebody wanted to buy that and rent it to people, you can't do it. It's like a form of price gouging. You know, you're buying up properties that cannot be turned over to people for the first time. Nobody could buy our house and rent it out and make a profit, because the house isn't worth it, in my opinion. It's not worth $94,000.
Sure. And the state of Wisconsin currently has about a $4.6 billion surplus and has been growing year over year. How would you suggest those funds be used, and when? When would we use them?
Well, I've had two different areas that I would like to see that money go. One is to the schools, the public schools, to help. They're not even able to maintain them anymore. The schools in Manitowoc are behind over $6 million in upkeep. Not renovations, but upkeep. And then the other thing that I would really like to see is for senior citizens to get a tax break. Take some of that money for the elderly. You know, we keep having to pass these referendum to pay for the second school districts and second school systems. And rather than do that, I'd like to see them put the money towards senior citizens. You know, Social Security does go up and stuff, but it doesn't go up much. And to help them and protect their property tax, I think would be a very good idea. I think it would help a lot of people.
Okay.
So that's basically the two things I would like to see happen with that.
Okay, thank you. And that leads us into talking a little bit more about education. So, what is your stance on school choice programs, such as vouchers and charter schools, and how do you propose to balance these options with the need to strengthen and support traditional public schools as well?
I firmly believe that we should not be funding voucher schools. There may be a few cases where it's necessary, but our education system, the public schools, are doing much better than the voucher schools. The education that the kids are getting there is higher. We need to bring back some of the Well, it was the Act 10, I think, that really destroyed things. And it happened about the same time the voucher system started. So we need to relook at the public schools. Get the things in there, music, art, things that aren't really being taught much anymore. The last thing I saw in the voucher program was that the private schools were about 30% below our public schools. And our public schools are the big educators. And we need to bring them back up to the standards. When Act 10 was passed, we lost about 70,000 teachers. And now there's a lot of qualified teachers that have just moved away because they can't make a living here in Wisconsin. And if you have teachers that can't make a living, you don't have teachers to teach.
Thank you. In the event that the school voucher programs do maintain, how would you ensure accountability and transparency in the allocation of public education funds? And what measures would you implement to track the effectiveness of spending in improving educational outcomes?
Was that for the voucher schools?
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the event that school choice is just is, and you don't have any control over that, what things would you put in place to ensure accountability and transparency?
One of the things that would help is to put on your tax statement how much money you're spending for the voucher schools compared to what you're paying for the public schools. So you know how much of your tax bill is going there. And standardized testing if they need, the public schools have to do standardized testing. The voucher schools do not. And voucher schools don't need to hire the qualified teachers. They don't have a school board system. There's very little open to the public about what's going on in a voucher school. I went to a seminar the other night where they talked about that, and there's just not the visibility into what's going on that we have. I mean, our public schools are pretty well set. You have to do this, you have to do that, but the voucher schools don't, and we have to at least bring them up to the standards of the public schools.
Thank you. And given the importance of early education in long-term academic success, so we think of pre-K programs, things of that nature, what policies would you support to expand access to high-quality early childhood education programs?
I'd like to see a pre-K system where they bring in the youngest kids and start them out early, because generally they do much better. Now, of course, that means money. But that's another reason why I don't like paying for the two systems. If we paid for one school system, we could have a pre-K through 12, where these kids can start maybe half a day, and they just start learning basic things, even just behavioral things. But we have to fund the public schools to make that work.
Thank you. And how would you plan to enhance parental and community engagement in public education decisions? And what mechanisms would you implement to ensure that diverse voices are included in shaping educational policy?
I think, again, it come down to getting the parents involved with the children's education and try to make people understand that, the teachers are there for 6-8 hours a day. The parents are there all the time. The parents are the ones that should be involved in telling the school systems what they need, and not keep taking things away. Banning books, to me, is a ridiculous idea. If the parents want to prevent the child from reading a book, the parents can do that. They don't have to have somebody come in and say, well, you know, we're going to take Catcher in the Rye now and throw it in the garbage. That was required reading when I was in high school. And there's too many things that get done that way now. And a big part of it is we all have to learn to talk. We not talk over each other, but just communicate.
Sure, sure. In light of growing mental health concerns among students, what comprehensive strategies would you propose to integrate mental health services into Wisconsin schools, and how do you plan to ensure these services are accessible to all students?
Well, mental health care is first given in the schools. That's where a child can go, feel safe, and talk to somebody. But again, the money was taken away. You know, with Act 10, there were massive school cuts, massive income cuts. We can't get people now to work for what the schools are paying. We have to start to prioritize the children, their education, and their mental welfare. And the only way to do that is, this last thing I think we saw, that there is about 250 mental health care professionals that if they could make a living in Wisconsin on what the schools pay, they would be here to help. And I know everything amounts to money, but there's ways to change things. And you know, unfortunately, I guess my biggest way would be the voucher program, because it really hurt us. And like I say, about 70,000 teachers were lost. In the prison system, we lost 60,000 guards. And the drain keeps going, because now a prison guard can go to Walmart and make more money as a security guy.
Thank you. So we're going to transition a little bit to the next topic. We're going to talk a little bit about abortion and equal rights. So first, tell me, what is your position on an equal rights amendment to the Wisconsin Constitution, and why do you support that position?
Equal rights for equal pay. You know, women should not be penalized and paid less for their jobs because of being a woman. Equal rights should be expanded to every living person in the state, regardless of who you love, you know, who you are with. You know, if they don't, we really need equal rights for the LGBTQ community. They work as hard as we do. They need the protections for their life, their future. And there is nobody here in the state who should have less rights.
Thank you. And with the ongoing national debate over reproductive rights, what specific legislative actions would you support to ensure equitable access to reproductive health services in Wisconsin, and how do you envision addressing potential barriers?
One of the things I would do is, when in women's health, where it says for the life of the mother, I would change that word life to health. A woman should not be forced to bleed out if she has a miscarriage. Now in Wisconsin, that's not an issue yet, but it will be. Right now we have what I think it's a 22-week abortion ban, but it should, it's the abortion issue is a health care issue. And I don't like the word abortion myself. It's too divisive. If we start looking at health care and realizing that every one of us deserves health care, life-saving health care, the protections, you never know what's going to happen with the baby or a fetus or a zygote, really, when they first start. And anything can happen. I saw one story on MSNBC where a woman was told early on in her pregnancy that she had a baby that would not be viable. The baby had a situation where it would die within 90 to about 180 minutes of birth. They made her carry the child to birth, and then the baby laid on her chest and suffocated. Now, that isn't pro-life. It's pro-birth. And there's a very big difference between the two. Rape, incest, you cannot force a little girl 10 years old to carry a baby. That is completely absurd. And then you take a woman who's had the miscarriage and she's, they're going to wait till the last heartbeat before they can do anything. Well, if they miss that last heartbeat, the woman dies, and she may have a couple other kids at home that were expecting her to come home with the baby, but she just never comes home. And I can't believe that in this country we can treat people that way.
So, I know we had a lot of questions surrounding abortion, and this one's just going to be very bold because this is how it was asked. But at what point do you believe that abortion should stop? At how many weeks? At how many months? What do you think is acceptable?
Well, I think a 22-week birth, decision time. But then, after that 22 weeks, if the child is not viable, if it's going to be a danger to the mother's life, then there is no limit because it is health care. Then it becomes, it's either this unviable baby or the mother. And we really need to take care of the mother. I mean, she's probably got other kids. She wants to start a family. There's a lot of reasons why a woman can have problems in pregnancy. And our country is one of the worst in the world or at least in the developed world, for women being pregnant. It's got a terrible mortality rate.
And how do you believe that restrictions on abortion access impact women's participation in the workforce? And what measures would you advocate for to safeguard reproductive rights and women's economic opportunities?
I would like to see where, as with any health care, you have the period of time to recover and go back to your job. It bothers me so much that there's so many things that women are, they're made virtually the responsible one when she gets pregnant and something happens. Men have none of that responsibility. You know, a man impregnates a woman, his part's done. You know, he may have to help care for her, pay, you know, child support or whatever, but when it comes down to it, it is the man who, you know, he participates or he doesn't. Women should not be held to a point where they, you know, lose their job because they get pregnant. That is part of life, and we need to have the right for women to continue into their jobs after they've recovered from whether it's a childbirth or a miscarriage or whatever it is. They should not be penalized in the workplace.
Thank you. And we will transition a little bit to talking about the potential legalization of marijuana. So first, what is your stance on the legalization of marijuana for recreational use in Wisconsin? And go for it. No, for it.
I was going to say that is something I am for.
Okay.
Keep the same kind of restrictions that you do on driving, you know, you can't drive high or whatever, but marijuana does not destroy your liver. There has never been a marijuana overdose that killed anybody. Alcohol will kill. And I guess the thing with the marijuana is people tend to get mellow rather than violent,
Okay.
which is, you know, not bad. I would rather see somebody who's a little high out there than somebody who's ready to beat the hell out of somebody else because they looked at them cross-eyed.
Fair enough. Thank you. And if marijuana were to be legalized, how would you plan to address the lingering effects of marijuana-related convictions on individuals and communities in Wisconsin, particularly in terms of expungement processes and support for reintegration into society?
Marijuana is basically a nonviolent offense. They're being put in jail because they had some on them, or, you know, even if they're selling it. I mean, it's against the law at the time, but a person's life should not be ruined, you know, or locked up in prison for a few years because they had something that is virtually harmless to the human body. I just think people should be, and Obama went a long way with this. He started getting the nonviolent marijuana type offenses released. And we could start doing that. There's no reason to keep those people in prison, you know, and it's just, I think, it's the same. It's, you know, treat it the same as you do an alcohol crime. Somebody drinks too much, well, they might go in the drunk tank till they're sober up. Kids underage smoke marijuana, there should be some kind of a probationary thing to keep away from underage kids. But once you turn 18, the same as with alcohol, or
21.
21. It's been a long time.
That's okay. That's okay. There's probably a lot of 18-year-olds that were getting very excited,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. I remember, that's so long ago. I remember at 18, we used to cross the Mississippi River to go into Wisconsin. You could buy, 3-2 beer. But, yeah, I would keep the age limits the same, 21.
Okay, thank you. And the citizens of Wisconsin, I can speak today, have watched both sides continue to disagree on just about every issue known to man. And there has been almost what we have perceived as a refusal to collaborate or compromise. Tell us how you would plan to reach across the aisle to get more accomplished and influence your party to follow suit.
Well, one of the things we really need to do is get more Democrats into the legislature so that we can kind of force conversations. Right now, it's so lopsided that the GOP, if they don't want to talk to somebody about something, they just cut it off. If we get to a better balance of party, if you've got equal sides, you have no choice but to talk. So I would like to see the election do that. But also, when I was a contract negotiator with the airline, we would, the company and us would be miles apart. But you take an issue, one issue that you can start to agree on, and you start talking about things, and from there, you start working together to get this one item done. Well, now you got one done, so maybe there's something else that you can talk about to get done. And that's what we need to do. We need to start talking to each other, not at each other. Every time you see politicians on TV, what they're doing is they're yelling their side. And nobody gets anything done that way. So you just have to start pushing and talking, start treating each other like you're working for the same cause, but you have a different idea how to get there, and start talking.
Thank you. And I know we are getting close to time, so before we say goodbye, I'd love to give you an opportunity to maybe share with viewers, share with folks in the room. Is there anything that we did not touch on and you want to make sure that people know before they head to the polls?
One of the things is that we touched on it a little bit, but Act 10 and right to work laws. The right to work law is a right to work for less. It doesn't mean you're going to get a good job and good pay. It means you can get a job, get paid less, but have no union affiliation and nobody talking to protect you to take care of your rights. Unions, like I was in the Airline Pilots Association for 30 years, and almost all of the big safety rules that came out were from the Airline Pilots Association by negotiating with companies and with the government. And we don't do that now. I think the unions are trying to. The unions want things to be that way. But now with the right to work law, the company has no incentive. They don't have to let people unionize. Act 10 took away so much from so many people. Like I said, it was a massive tax or a massive pay cut to a lot of people. It meant that they could not use the unions to negotiate for them. We lost so many good teachers and so many prison guards. We lost people working on the roads. Any state job that had union protection was affected. And that hurt Wisconsin terribly. We need to go back to protecting unions. I know for myself, what the Airline Pilot Association did, when I first started there, I was making $8 an hour for flight hours. So normally you'd fly 60 hours a month. So you get paid 60 times the $8. And there were no protections for long layovers. There were no protections. I mean, they could send you out legally and not pay you for a couple of days by putting you in a hotel room somewhere, which you had to share with the guy you're working with, which was not fun. So eventually we got that taken care of. We got the pay raised up so that new hire people were not living in poverty. Mm-hmm. And so that we could force the company to give us breaks and then pay while we're sitting there. And shorten our work hours so it was safer. So the unions do a lot to protect people.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you again for your willingness to serve and for participating in this conversation today. Really appreciate that. I want to say thank you again to Prevea Health for your continued support of programming like this and others. And we are going to take a quick break before we return with our next district. Thank you again.